of self-publishing. At a time when self-publishing was still taboo, people didn't look at it favorably. I was ashamed of it.
Is this pre-2009?
So 2008, I published my first book as an indie title, and went out of my way to make it as professional looking as possible. It turns out to be a good plan anyway.
Yeah, right.
I wanted it to be, you wouldn't be able to discern whether that was self-published or traditionally published. That was the idea, which turns out to have been the right idea. So that led to, I made the fateful decision. For some reason, I foolishly wrote book 1 of 3 on the title of that book on that cover, and that locked me into having to write 2 more.
Right.
And, that was an excruciating experience for a couple of years. Basically, I had to pull those books out of my brain, kicking and screaming, and then one day decided that if I really was serious about writing full time and being an author, then I'd have to overcome the dread of the whole thing, and then come up with a system. And I did. I came up with I call it my 30-day author system. I even wrote a book with that title, but I started working on writing a book every 30 days.
Holy smokes!
Yeah. So for a good 2 years, I did that. Yeah. So
how long are these books?
They're typically 60,000 at a minimum, and usually around 80,000 words. So they're full-length novels. I mean, they're legit.
Just give us a teaser, and then people can read the book.
You don't even have to. You do not have to buy the book. The key here is really just it's basic math. You figure out your word target. I was using the NaNoWriMo model of a 50,000 word book. Okay, so if you're going to write, that's their deal, right? And the whole process of NaNoWriMo is write 50,000 words in 30 days.
Right, although I always tell people you're writing a first draft.
That's a draft, right. So, but what I figured out pretty quickly was that if I could set any number I wanted as the goal and work backwards to figure out how many words per day I needed to commit to. I've been a copywriter most of my career. I'm used to working on deadlines, working rapidly, having to produce something pretty clean. I need editing like everyone else, but I can produce a fairly clean manuscript in a short amount of time. And it's because I practiced that skill for years, decades, really. So I figured out that I could do, if you do around 1,700 words a day, you're going to knock out a 50,000 word novel in about 15 days, really. So you can really play around with this, and it comes down to how much time you're willing to put into it. Right. But I don't expect anyone to do that. I expect everyone to work to something comfortable.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there are a lot of people listening thinking, "Oh, that's not real writing." But I remember reading about Georges Simenon, the French crime writer, who I think is one of the best ever. Yeah, but came to regret his famous character, Inspector Maigret. Yeah. Because that was taking him away from his serious work, which no one remembers today. Right. But everybody loves the mystery novels. So he came up with a plan where he could do one in 2 weeks. Right. Now, these were much shorter books, but it's much like what you would say. First draft in 10 days, and then a second draft in 2 days, and a couple more drafts, and he's done. I tell authors all the time. So the key here, by the way, is to disengage from your editing brain, right? Right. We've been sort of taught that we have to produce perfect copy or perfect words, in one try. And editing is something we do on the go, and that's not the way it works. If you try to edit while you write, you'll increase the amount of time it takes exponentially. So you have to shut off your inner editor until that manuscript is done. And the analogy I use is it's like carving a statue out of marble. You can't start until you have the marble. So as the writer, you're producing the marble, and then you come back as an editor and you shape that into David. That's how you have to think of it. You've got 2 different jobs. You can only do one job at a time. Right. You've also got the podcast. Yes. Wordslinger. Wordslinger. Tell me about that. I started Wordslinger in 2013 as a way to connect to people I wanted to learn from, primarily.
It was a sort of networking tool in a way. But
exactly. That's how I feel about this one. I get to talk to cool people.
Well, and that is the cool thing about podcasts are an excuse to reach out to people who know more than you do, who have greater experience than you have, and learn from them and give them something in return as well. It isn't a one-way conversation. And people have been doing this sort of thing forever. They just never called it a podcast.
Right.
Idea. Yeah. I mean, you have this idea of an informational interview. People wanting to become executives did that sort of thing all the time. Mm-hmm. So we never looked down on that idea. Podcasting has opened up a lot of doors for me, career-wise. I mean, I've told you this before. I mean, practically every good thing that happened in my career came as a result of the Wordslinger podcast over the past 5 years. So,
right.
Incredible tool.
And I think that led to your affiliation now with Draft2digital, your director of marketing, right?
Right, yes.
Tell us about Draft2digital. What is it they do?
So at its heart, Draft2digital is what's known as a book aggregator or a publishing aggregator. What we do is we'll help you with converting your manuscript from a Word document into the major ebook formats. So EPUB and Mobi are the two big ones. And then PDFs play into that, but in a sort of slightly different role. We build a series of tools and resources that allow writers to focus less on the mechanics and the technical side of the publishing business so that they can focus more on the writing. And everything we offer is free of charge. The only way we make money is if you choose to distribute through us, we'll take 10% of the royalties made through sales to our sales channels. And so our primary business is distributing to all the major sales channels: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Apple Books. They rebranded to Apple Books. Right. All those major ones. And we've got some others that may not have heard of, like Tolino and Scribd. And Scribd is a kind of a Netflix model for book sales. So it's actually kind of cool. So we help with a lot of that. I mean, we're constantly adding new things to our catalog that are all meant to make the writer's life a lot easier.
Right. So you do the formatting, you distribute it where it needs to go, and you provide some kind of royalty statement or sales statements?
We have a sales and royalty dashboard so that you can see everything in one place. And one of the challenges when you are publishing to multiple sales channels, multiple platforms. So they all have different requirements for book sizes, the way the content is formatted, the cover size and style. So we'll help with all that and make sure it's all uniform for all the various retailers. And they also have their own processes for reporting your sales and royalties, for doing your sales, your tax interviews. All these things can vary by platform, so it can get very challenging to keep track of everything. It becomes kind of a nightmare. So, we were founded by a writer, an author, and two of his, programming buddies, who they were just trying to build something that was better than the alternatives out there. And thankfully, they decided to share it with everyone.
Sure. Now, of course, this whole indie movement is sometimes called self-publishing. Yeah. And everything you've described, formatting, distributing, is theoretically somebody could do themselves. Right. So what's the Draft2digital advantage?
So it's really just that it's all done for you, saving you time. You don't have to pay someone to do your formatting, which is something that, until recently was pretty common.
Something that has caused me to bang my head against the wall for hours on more than one occasion.
So, and I have to say, by the way, we test our files on every device there is. So we're compliant with everything. So we take out all that. Microsoft Word inserts something we call junk code into every file, and it can add a lot of weight to a lot. It can increase file size. It can make things go haywire for formatting. We pull all that stuff out. So the big advantage in going with us over going direct is really just the convenience of having it all in one place. You certainly can go direct to all these channels, and you can make a little more money too because you don't have to pay the 10% royalty.
Yeah,
I consider that a convenience fee.
Right. That's not giving up much for a lot of, it's not really just doing it.
Right.
It's learning how to do all those things you've just described.
Plus, I can tell you for certain, and I will put money on the table, and you can ask anyone at this conference or anywhere else what we're known for. And the thing we're known for the most is our author support, customer support. If you have a problem, you can contact us by email, by phone, by Twitter. Someone is going to help you out, and usually within 24 hours. It's usually within a couple of hours, but depending on your timing. We've had people reach out at 2 a.m. on Friday, and they're not going to hear from us probably until Monday. But beyond that, we're all about that support. Yeah. And the reality is we're usually monitoring it, practically everything. We got a really great support team, and then all of us chip in and help out. I monitor social media mostly, and I offer advice when I can.
Sure. Well, as a practical standpoint, for only 10%, you're saving writers potentially a lot of time, and then that time can be used to generate more content, more books.
It's exactly the plan.
And that's smart.
Yeah. Now, we have a lot of authors some of us in this community eventually hire personal assistants.
Right.
And those personal assistants are basically going out and doing all these tasks. So if you don't have the income levels to hire a PA, one way to offset the time it takes to do all this is to use a service like Draft2digital. And we then have some authors who decide to have their PAs use Draft2digital because it saves them on hours. So
and then the PA can focus on marketing. Publicity.
The PA goes out and hires their own PA, and then they use Draft2digital.
You guys will probably expand into the marketing next year or something like that.
Yeah. We have this sort of Mendelbrot kind of thing. The closer in you get, the more you realize it's all the same.
Well, Draft2digital has grown exponentially. And how long has it been around?
We were founded in 2012. We sort of officially, we were officially a business in 2012. In 2013 is when we really took off. We have really grown exponentially over the past few years. It's in the past since I started with the company, and we'll just say this is a coincidence, but since I've started with the company, we've probably at least doubled in the amount of books that we are handling, the amount of authors that we handle. Right now I think we're sitting at around 150,000 books in distribution.
And thousands of authors, right?
Yeah, around 50,000 authors, active authors. And that's the active authors. We also have quite a few inactive authors who are using us just for conversion, for example. Because one of the big bonuses, you can use all those services and a few more I haven't mentioned without having to distribute through us. So if you decide you do want to go direct and you just need a free way to convert your manuscript, you can pop into Draft2digital and do that. And we offer templates very similar to what Vellum offers. But where Vellum requires you to own a Mac and invest on that side of the technology, we're agnostic to your operating system. It's all web-based.
Right.
Like I have a story actually. Last year, just before this conference, I was between conferences, and I went to Disney World for a day. And I was in line for the Avatar Flight of Passage ride. It was a 3.5-hour wait.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
So on my phone, I wrote a short story. And then I used Canva to create a cover for it. And I used Draft2digital to do the layout, convert it into a layout, and got it all the way to the point where all I would have to do is hit publish. And I could have sent that story live. And I did all that from my iPhone.
It is much better use than I've ever put to being stuck in a queue waiting for a ride.
That's the point, right? We want to make that. So that's an example of just how easy it's become to start a writing career. Short of, I wanted to do some editing to that manuscript before I went live, but today, if a lot of teenagers do this, they'll write and post something on Wattpad. They could just as easily post. Put it up for sale on all the various markets and start making a little money from it if they wanted to.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, Kevin, thank you for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Kevin Tumlinson as much as I enjoyed doing it. He's a terrific guy, and if you're thinking about self-publishing,